What does accountability mean? For me, it's about ownership.
I think that the lack of accountability is the root of a lot of our problems in the world.
I don't think accountability, though, can be determined by whether it's a democratic process or whether it's an authoritarian process. Because you can have very democratic processes that don't deliver better forms of accountability as well. Democracy is not a synonym for accountability.
It should be something so simple. It should be natural to everybody.
Things like climate change and financial meltdown forced us to understand much more clearly the linkages between different things. Our understanding of the complexity of the interrelationships has increased enormously, and our ability to cope with the interrelationships has arguably declined somewhat over the same period. We think we've got some specific ways of thinking about and doing change, but that's a question we're going to test over the next couple of days.
I think there's a real thirst for innovation. The kind of companies that I interact with, who, if you like, many of whom being the pioneers, are kind of waiting for new ideas to kind of come forward about where next. So I think there's tremendous opportunity for further innovation.
Accountability can influence three areas. The economic climate, the macro, over which we felt it had very limited impact, if any. Influencing boards of governance to influence senior leadership thinking, and influencing the financial community. Because unless the financial services of the financial community is willing to place a premium on accountable and sustainability led businesses, CEOs will continue to revert to old behavior.
The great energy that's here in this space. One can hope for it, and one can kind of try its best to elevate one's own energy and one's little team. But to get everybody in the same mood, it's not something you plan. And I think we got it.
But clearly there's a deficit of accountability in the world, specifically in the financial markets. And people need to step up and need to say, all right, what are we going to do to improve on this deficit? And how can we put trust back into accountability? So this is where we are. It's hopefully an opportunity, although it's very negative what we experience, but actually an opportunity to take a bold step to say, let's draw the line. Let's become far more specific and granular about being accountable. What does it mean? To whom do you need to be accountable for?
I come from Central Europe. The biggest accountability gap is that multinational companies still feel that they can have different practices in the more developed areas than the lesser developed or the emerging ones. And I think that our challenge is to convince them with the carrot or the stick to use global practices which would be the same in their homeland as it would be further down the road in the provinces, so to say.
I travel a lot, and airlines are definitely the least accountable organisations. And the worst thing about airlines is they have a sort of faux accountability, a false accountability, where they never quite say sorry, they never quite improve, they never quite get it right, but they always got something to tell you that doesn't satisfy you, and so you feel more angry and more disappointed after they've been through their sort of process of fake accountability. So every time I get on a plane and I get the treatment, it fires me up to go and do another year's work.
The work of promoting accountability is critical for ensuring that the cynicism that many citizens feel about even democracy today, accountability can breathe life into weakening democracy and weakening commitments to democracy. But more importantly, if we look at the current global financial crisis, we see that in fact governments have actually behaved in pretty unaccountable ways, as well as certain parts of their corporate sector. And we are concerned that accountability to the people in the developing world in particular, especially when we're thinking about sustainability and environment and climate change. I come from Africa, where we've been the least responsible for the climate catastrophe we find ourselves in, but already Africa is paying the biggest price for it in terms of the impact of climate change.
So I think the communication is a key. I'm a journalist, that's why I think I'm so worried about this issue. To be simple and prove the value in a simple word, simple way.
Over the years, we have felt that the needs of the organisation have changed, and we need to move forward and adopt or adapt our governance mechanisms to better suit the needs of the organisation in the future. So we're again embarking on a new governance mechanism, which again is very innovative and taking us in a new direction. And I'm not aware of anybody who's done it in quite this way before.
We have a culture of innovation and a culture of companionship as a way of working collectively, and that creates a weakness in scaled implementation and a weakness in managerialism, which is a part of what makes organizations efficient as one moves beyond inspiration. Yeah. And so our great strengths of innovation and companionship also reflect the challenges we have to overcome to move to the next level. The real story in every room is, how does one move beyond the avant-garde and go to scale? The sort of the experimental period is done. And that doesn't mean one is no longer innovative or one doesn't have to be innovative because it's just a question of standardization, but the innovativeness needs to change its focus from proof of concept to innovations to get to scale.
This, in some ways, is the accountability moment with the financial crisis and global climate change and all these issues that are intertwined. And how does accountability balance its need to innovate and to stay at the forefront of dialogue in emerging areas?
All the points that are made, if this work is to become more relevant to people in the developing world, who constitute the majority of the people on this planet, we need to infuse it with notions of equity, notions of justice, and notions of real and meaningful democracy.